Hey guys, how's it going? So it's a beautiful day today and Aaron and I have the chance to get out and get some of our things fertilized. I have been working on it as I've had a chance to work on some projects in our flower beds, so the bulk of our hydrangeas and roses have already been fertilized, but I do have a few of those that I forgot and I need to fertilize today, as well as some other shrubs, small trees, evergreens, and perennials. Aaron's in the barn filling up the gator with everything we need, but I thought it would be maybe helpful for those of you guys who are just getting started with gardening, or for those of you who need a brush up, just to go through a couple of fertilizer basics. I have this bag of Hollytone, which we're going to be using quite a bit of today, as well as several others I'll show you in a moment, but I really just wanted to talk about the three numbers that you always see on a fertilizer bag and what they mean. So you can see this Hollytone here is a 434, and if you look at the breakdown right below it, you'll see that that means it has 4% nitrogen, that's the first number, 3% phosphorus, the second number, and 4% potassium. And nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium are three key nutrients for your plant's health. So nitrogen is what helps your plant grow very healthy and like sturdy, and it helps create the really deep green leaves. Your phosphorus helps with root development and fruit set, and then potassium helps with overall hardiness of the plant and disease resistance. You'll also notice other ingredients being listed, which sometimes you might be concerned with if you're looking to, add something like more of one of those in particular, if you've got an issue going on, but most of the time it's the top three that we're concerned with. It's also helpful to look at this list here to see what this fertilizer was derived from. The more the ingredients, the better the feed. So you can see that, hydrolyzed feather meal, poultry manure, bone meal, alfalfa meal, so forth and so on. And also check out the list of slow release ingredients as well. And you might see a bag like this that says 434, and then you see a bag next to it, some other type of fertilizer that says has the numbers 10, 10, 10, and you think, well, maybe I should get that one because it's got a higher concentration or a higher percentage of those three key ingredients. But it doesn't necessarily make it a better fertilizer, because oftentimes those higher analysis fertilizers are giving your plants nutrients they don't actually need or can't utilize. And so it's a little bit wasteful, and it's more potential of those things just leaching out and away from the plant, and it's just not necessary. And we usually do at least a once a year just kind of blanket feed of most of our things, except for, big mature trees. You don't have to do that unless there's an issue that you're trying to correct. We don't fertilize. Some perennials don't like to be fertilized. Sedums, Russian sage, what else? Other things. There's probably more I'm just forgetting right now. Anyway, we typically at least like to hit our plants with fertilizer once a year, and then some of those other high performing things we do a little bit more often, and then of course annuals here, it's a completely different story. And we just like to use the organic. Well, we've been using the Espoma for so many years. It's what my parents used all the years of me growing up, and it just provides exactly what the plants need. We're not looking to make our perennials and things into performance athletes. We're just looking to provide them with enough nutrients to keep them nice and healthy. We fertilize our plants at least once a season. Annuals, completely different story. Those are high performance plants that need a lot of feed in order to perform the way we want them to. But things like perennials, shrubs, trees that we're fertilizing today, we feel like if we at least get them fertilized once in the spring, we're doing good. If we can hit them late summer, early fall for that second feed, that's great, but at least if we get the spring one done, we feel pretty good about ourselves. And I just really like the way that organic fertilizers work. So they work at a soil or microbial level. They're conditioning the soil around the roots of the plant, not just giving your plants a quick shot of food, which means that you would need to fertilize them a lot more, and that's how a lot of synthetic fertilizers work. So I know that when I put this down, I'm not putting down unnecessary amounts of things that the plants can't even use, and I know that it sticks around longer. So anyway, we need to go check on Aaron and see what else we need to get in that gator. Oh my mercy, it is humid in this room right now. I'm opening the garage door to air it out. My seedlings though, oh my goodness, they're doing great. Look at that. Look at these. Everything's looking so good. These are pretty. Amethyst basil. Got it all?
I don't know. I'm trying to think of the best way to get this stuff out.
Do you suppose that's the best way, or just pouring it out of the bag? I'm game to try whatever.
We could We could try multiple ways, I suppose.
And real quick, before we get too much further or get into the project at all, two things I forgot to mention. I am going to be running some experiments this year with the flower tone. We're not using this today, but I've been using it in some of my spring containers, and I'd like to try adding it into some of our summer containers, because if we can cut down on the amount of fertilizer we're having to do weekly, that would be amazing. Even if we have to apply it once a month. That's better than having to go in once a week with fertilizer.
I think typically the problem has been once your flowers get really large, it's like, how do you get it into the soil?
Sure.
Because your containers just get so big. So I still don't know how that's going to work.
What if we got a giant funnel and popped it like through the leaf canopy down to the soil level, and just like released a little bit at a time?
Yeah. Like what do you think? Do we have one of those? Or do you
I
think
think so. Do you need an example? Oh, the sun feels good.
Yeah, it does.
I can show you an example later.
Okay.
Maybe we could come up with some kind of sweet tool, then we could sell it.
Patent it.
Yeah. And we're also going to be using soil acidifier in the areas where we're working today, because our pH is super high, our soil pH, and we're hoping to bring the pH down to help our plants out. This is not something that everybody needs to do, and it's completely different than fertilizing. So I want to make that distinction. This is the fertilizer we're using today, Hollytone and Plantone. This is a soil amendment that we're using because of high pH.
Some people might have the opposite problem though, right?
Yeah.
Well, would they use like lime?
If they have low pH, they would use lime to bring it up. Yeah, so you really do need to know your soil chemistry, like to have a soil test done and know your pH in order to know what you need to use properly with that. But we're trying to kill two birds with one stone here. That's our goal, try to get as much done as we can.
How are we going to do this? Are we going to break it up by, like, use all the Hollytone first and then the Plantone, or do you want to go by area where we're using both of them?
It depends on what you want to do. I kind of like to button up areas, like one flower bed at a time, and then like check that off the list. But if you want to do it differently, that's fine.
It just means taking like 2 buckets or 2 bags with you at the same time.
But you could take 1 bag and I could take 1 bag. Well, no, I'm going to do fertilizer, right? And you're going to do acidifier.
However you want to do it.
Oh boy. Okay guys, real quick too. We are going to be using Hollytone on a lot of our evergreens and hydrangeas and other shrubs and things like that I have forgotten to fertilize earlier. Plantone, we're going to be using, the only evergreens we're going to be using Plantone on are our boxwoods and arborvitaes, which Hollytone, even though it's labeled for evergreens, Plantone is better for those 2 varieties of plants. And we have a lot of both of those. A lot.
So we'll use more Plantone than Hollytone probably.
Yes, yeah. So Erin wants to go through with Hollytone and soil acidifier first and get those done. And then we'll go back through with soil acidifier and Plantone on the things that need that. And then we'll be done. We're not going to get through the whole garden today. We're just going to start in, see how far we get. Okay, so we're starting in this flower bed here. There's a couple things I wanted to address. First off, the label tells you to apply the fertilizer to the drip line of the plant. So I want to show you where the drip line is. That is where the outermost branches, kind of where they end. That's where the drip line is, which is where the roots that are most actively growing are. So they're the ones that will most actively take up nutrients. So you would take your Hollytone, like for this blue spruce right here, and you would sprinkle it around the drip line of the plant, like that. I have seen, you go all the way around, which I will do. I have seen questions like, well, if you have this huge shrub and you've just trimmed it back, is the drip line way out here? Or is it like now where your shrub currently is? And technically, your root system probably goes out way further than the actual canopy of your shrub. Like, let's say this rose, let's say it was this big. You know, it's grown huge, but I just did a big rejuvenation prune and I took it way down. Well, the roots are way further than where I have it trimmed to. So basically, don't worry about it. Just do one of these. You know, just spread it around the area. It'll make it to the roots of the plant. So don't get too worried about it. And the last couple of things I wanted to talk about, because we do see the questions quite often, are: 1, does fertilizer go bad? That's not something I would worry about. I would just go ahead and use it. If it looks good, you know, if it's got a nice consistency still, then that's great. If it looks molded, or if you see big chunks in it because it got wet at some point, I would probably pitch it and get new stuff, but otherwise I'd just use it. Number 2, do you need to remove the mulch layer from around your plants? Technically, it's the best. If you've got really thick mulch and landscape fabric in particular, the best thing you can do is scoot the mulch away, lift up your landscape fabric and toss the fertilizer under the landscape fabric, getting it as close to contact with the soil, which means it'll go to the roots quicker. we don't use landscape fabric except for underneath our arborvitae hedge. In that case, we've got landscape fabric that goes quite far, like almost to the trunk of the plant, and that's the only time that we don't fertilize really around the drip of the drip line of the plant. We just kind of toss it as close to the trunk as we can get it, because then we know it will eventually make its way underneath that landscape fabric and get to the roots of the plant.
The last couple of years on the arbs, I've just been tossing it in the general area.
Just kind of giving it a toss.
Yep.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of nuances that are just don't worry about it. Just get out there and fertilize. Don't worry about it. You know, water tends to move things down, and our mulch kind of becomes part of our soil. That's why you see all these drip lines exposed. We waited to mulch, like do a new layer of mulch, for two reasons. One, to fix any drip issues we may have. Now that we have our water on, we can see it a little bit better. And then we wanted to fertilize before we put our new mulch down. Oh, and then the very last thing is we are going to be fertilizing so many different things that we're not really necessarily going to stop and show you each plant and what we're feeding it with. If you just want to get one fertilizer, that's good for everything. Get the plant tone. If you want to feed something specifically, just read the label. That's all. So we're just going to try to work through this as quickly as we can and get all this stuff down. So here we go. Alright guys, so we pretty much buttoned that whole project up. I can't even believe it. That went really fast. It always goes faster when you've got a couple people out here working on it. The last thing we do have to do is get a hose out to water all the areas, which we've got hoses pretty much that reach every single spot that we fertilized, just to help push all the fertilizer down. We do have drip in pretty much all our areas. Hi buddy, what are you doing? Benjamin just came out to join us. You rolling around in the grass? That is a good thing to do on a day like today. Yep. Perfect. So I think I was saying we do have drip system in all the flower beds, but it only runs by one side of the plant, and we put fertilizer all the way around the plant, so it just works out better to initially help get that fertilizer down by hand watering. I also wanted to mention that I do use a lot of the Biotone starter fertilizer. You guys see me use it all the time, but that's for when you're planting stuff. It's a starter fertilizer. So the stuff we were fertilizing today are all established things, and that's why we're using the Plantone and the Hollytone. And that's it, you guys. Hope this video was helpful to you, just to kind of go through some of the basics, how we apply it, some of those common things that we see being asked about fertilizer. Of course, you can dive super deep into this subject, and it gets very technical. I don't tend to like to do that. I just like to just get the job done.
Well, and maybe you can caveat too, and there's like a lot of ways to have success.
Yeah, there are a lot of ways to have success.
This is just the way that, like,
this is the way we find it. Yeah. Yeah, our plants seem to react really well to this method. So anyway, thank you guys so much for watching this video, and we will see you in the next one. Bye.
Bye, Lily.
See you later. Say bye.